My jealous stepsister slept with my husband, stole my life, and now she wants me to bless her wedding. Here's how I got my revenge. My husband Jerry M52 and I, F48, have been together for almost 12 years, married for 10. In the beginning, we were just so happy, you know? Every moment together was a piece of joy, filling our days with laughter, dreams, and all those little things that made us love each other even more. We were a team, tackling life side by side. Our smiles were contagious, and everything felt a bit better when we were together. Anniversary after anniversary, we soaked up the love we had. Cozy Sundays and random date nights just made everything feel right. Life was simple, and we loved every second of it. But out of nowhere, things started to change. Date nights became a bit tense, and the easy laughter didn't ring out like it used to. I started noticing that he slowly began to spend more and more time on his phone instead of with me. Date nights weren't as carefree anymore. There was this tension in the air. The happiness we had started to slowly disappear, and I couldn't shake the feeling that our relationship was slipping through my fingers. The intimacy we once had was slipping away, replaced by a growing distance that felt impossible to bridge. I started to suspect that Jerry might be having an affair. The late-night phone calls and mysterious messages became too frequent for me to ignore. I questioned the changes in his behavior, the way he seemed distant, even when we were inches apart. But Jerry dismissed it, saying that I was reading too much into his behavior and that he was just busy at work. In my gut, I knew it wasn't just paranoia. It was a sense that our marriage was taking an unexpected turn. One Friday evening, I decided to surprise Jerry with a dinner date, hoping to rekindle our connection. Eagerly, I headed to his office to pick him up, envisioning a night of connection and joy. However, my excitement soon turned to disappointment when a message from him claimed he would be working late due to an overwhelming workload. I sighed, accepting the change in plans without informing him that I was waiting for him downstairs. As I was just about to leave the vicinity, to my surprise, I saw Jerry exiting his workplace. I was confused, as this conflicted with his message about a demanding workload. Puzzled, I watched him get into his car and drive away. Instinctively, with curiosity stirring within me, I decided to follow him. Little did I know that what I was about to see would shake me to my very core. I followed him and watched him pull into a bar. I was confused as to what he was doing there and why he was lying to me about it. As I discreetly observed him at the bar, my worst fears came to light. He was meeting a woman. I stood there frozen as the woman's back somehow looked familiar to me. The mystery woman then turned to sit down in front of him, and my eyes widened in shock as I realized it was my stepsister Karen. I could feel my legs give out in shock, and I almost collapsed in front of the bar. While spying on them, I watched my husband and Karen holding hands and smiling at each other warmly. The realization hit me like a gut punch, and I felt an overwhelming urge to puke. The sheer disgust mingled with the betrayal left me grappling with a mix of emotions, unsure of how to react to the depth of his deceit. I remember leaving the bar in a daze, making sure that Jerry didn't catch me. That night was the most difficult night of my life. I don't think I have ever cried so much since my dog passed away last year. The pain was excruciating, realizing that the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with was cheating on me with my very own stepsister. For some context regarding my stepsister, my parents split when I was very little, and my mom married her new husband, Harry. Harry had a daughter from his previous marriage called Karen. At first, Karen and I used to get along well despite our 4-year age gap. However, our relationship started to wane when I slowly discovered her knack for manipulation. She proved to be a master of deceit, effortlessly turning any situation to her advantage. Whether it was lying to our parents to avoid punishments, or deceiving complete strangers without a second thought, Karen's manipulative skills knew no bounds. For some reason, Karen was always jealous of me, even though we both came from broken homes. No matter how hard I tried, I could never get her to like me. As we grew up and eventually went to college, I saw less and less of her. I had secured a full-ride scholarship for college and relished my college days, making new friends, exploring different classes, and savoring the freedom of youth. I started coming back home less and less, and eventually stopped talking to Karen, except at family events. Even though I kept my distance from Karen, she continued to be nasty to me over the years. She would make subtle yet hurtful comments about my appearance whenever we were alone during events. Whether it was a remark on my choice of clothing or a sly comment about how I should consider hitting the gym more often, her words were targeted to chip away at my confidence. I would always try my best to ignore these comments as much as possible. Karen didn't just stop there. She would often act overly friendly with my husband, who was then my boyfriend. She would make remarks to him, like how he deserved someone better looking, or how hot his gym pictures were. I remember Jerry would get visibly uncomfortable back then and blush at her compliments. I always chalked it up to Karen being Karen. She had always been this inappropriate with everyone I dated and introduced to my family. Since my marriage to Jerry, she had toned down her flirtatious behavior, and I never thought much about it anyway. But after discovering them both together tonight in the pub, I was sure that this had been going on for a while. They looked cozy and comfortable with each other. When Jerry returned that night, I pretended to be asleep. He reeked of whiskey and sweat and didn't even bother hiding it. His brazen attitude hinted at his growing arrogance, where he had started to think that he could just get away with something like this. I stayed awake the entire night, thinking of my next steps. In the morning, before Jerry could wake up, I slightly took his phone out of our bedroom so I could go through it. Going through his messages, calls, emails, and pictures, I diligently documented evidence by taking photos on my own phone. That morning, after Jerry left for work, I decided to drive to my mom's place because I knew she was the only one who could comfort me. My stepdad was at work, so I knew I could talk to my mom in privacy. When I told my mom about my husband's affair with my stepsister, she was just as shocked as me. She almost didn't believe me until I pulled up all the evidence. She was beyond outraged that Jerry and Karen could do such a despicable thing. My mom, being the rock she is, immediately made plans to confront them in front of everyone. I could understand how enraged my mother was, given that she had always treated Karen like her own daughter while we were growing up. We just couldn't understand how my very own stepsister could stab me in the back this way. We hatched a plan to call our close family members for dinner during the weekend at my place. My mom asked me to keep my mouth shut and not let Jerry know anything about this. On the day of my party, everyone arrived looking fresh and happy. We all had dinner together, and then, as people were sipping wine, I looked at my mom and nodded, signaling that it was time. She understood and stood up to get the projector. I clinked my glass to get everyone's attention. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," I began, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions within me. "I've called you all here for a special reason, something I've been grappling with for a while. I want you to pay attention to the projector, as I have a surprise for you." Curiosity filled the room as my family and friends turned their attention towards the projector screen. My mom had set up the device, and I took a deep breath, ready to unveil the painful truth. I connected it to my phone and began scrolling through the images and messages I had collected from my husband's phone. The room fell into a hushed silence as everyone stared at the projector. The first image appeared on the screen, a picture of Jerry and Karen in an intimate pose. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Everyone looked at it, seemingly confused. "This is not easy for me, but I felt you all needed to know the truth," I continued, my voice unwavering. "These pictures and messages are evidence of an affair between my husband Jerry and my stepsister, Karen." The room erupted into disbelief, anger, and shock. Eyes widened and jaws dropped as the evidence unfolded before them. My mom's face reflected a mix of fury and sorrow, and I could feel the tension escalating. She stood beside me, holding my hand, letting me know silently that she had my back. I continued scrolling through the damning messages, exposing the depth of the betrayal. The more I revealed, the more everyone's shock turned into palpable anger. I turned to face Jerry and Karen, who were sitting in stunned silence. Jerry's face flushed with guilt, and Karen, once manipulative and cunning, looked small and exposed. The room seemed to vibrate with the collective anger of those present. My mom stepped forward, her voice sharp and filled with disappointment. "How could you do this to our family, to your spouse, your sister?" she demanded, her eyes boring into Jerry and Karen. My stepdad looked straight at Karen and asked her if what I had shown was true. Karen burst out crying, hearing the depth of his words. Other family members began expressing their own disbelief and outrage. Some exchanged glances, shaking their heads, while others whispered angry comments to one another. Jerry and Karen, cornered by the damning evidence and the furious reactions around them, sat there unable to find words to defend their actions. The room pulsated with the weight of the truth, and my heart, though heavy, felt a strange sense of relief. The secret was out, and the deception was laid bare for all to see. I spoke up once again, addressing the room. "I didn't bring you all here just to expose them, but also to let you know that I will be divorcing Jerry. If Karen wants to have my husband, then she can have him. I appreciate all of your understanding and support through this difficult time." As the shock turned into solidarity, the room unified in support of me. Friends and family offered words of comfort and condemnation to Jerry and Karen. Jerry's face had turned red, and he walked out in humiliation. Karen ran behind him, clearly finding an excuse to get out of the situation. My mom hugged me, and I started to cry. All this while, I had kept this pain hidden inside me, and it came flooding out. In the months following this incident, I found myself emotionally drained, unable to summon the strength to even get out of bed. The weight of the betrayal, coupled with the exhaustion of countless tears, had left me feeling like a mere shell of myself. Sleep had become both my refuge and my escape from the painful reality. I kicked Jerry out of our house as we sorted through our divorce. It was a long and arduous journey, but I knew I wanted to be divorced from Jerry as soon as possible. 2 days ago, after months of enduring the legal proceedings, the court finally granted us our wish. We were officially separated. Was beyond happy and spent the day with my mom shopping and eating ice cream. For the first time in a long while, I felt liberated and free. That evening, while we were sitting and enjoying a movie back at my mom's place, my stepdad came into the room looking quite upset. My mom asked him what was wrong, but he looked at me with concern. I sat up straight and asked him if something had happened. He asked me if I had seen what Karen had posted recently on Facebook. I shook my head and opened my phone to search for her profile. With bated breath, I opened her profile to see her latest picture with Jerry. They were smiling and looking at each other lovingly. She captioned it with, "So happy to be engaged." My breath stopped as I looked at the caption, and then I realized she was wearing a ring. I was beyond shocked, to say the least. My mom, who was looking at me curiously, snatched the phone from my hand and uttered a cry of bewilderment, realizing that Karen was indeed getting married to Jerry. I don't even remember what happened the rest of the night. Overwhelmed by shock and disbelief, I sank back into the couch, my mind racing with a whirlwind of emotions. The room seemed to close in on me as I grappled with the reality of the situation. My mom, equally stunned, tried to comfort me, but words failed us both. As if this wasn't bad enough, my stepdad received a call from Karen. She was probably calling to share the news with him. I requested him to please put her on speaker so I could hear what she had to say. My stepdad nodded and picked up her call. He quietly listened to her while she gushed over her engagement and how happy she was to be getting married to Jerry. I listened to her words, heartbroken, feeling completely empty inside. My stepdad then angrily told her, "Karen, what you have done today is not just incredibly insensitive and hurtful to your stepsister, but it is going to affect the entire family." Karen retorted, perhaps upset by his reaction. "I don't understand, Dad. Jerry and I are in love, and we're getting married. What's wrong with celebrating that?" My stepdad sternly replied, "What's wrong, Karen, is the way you've gone about it. You had an affair, and you think that's okay? Your actions have caused immense pain to someone you should consider family. Instead of being respectful and understanding, you are now flaunting your engagement in front of her and the rest of us without a thought for the consequences." Hearing his words, I broke down crying while my mom consoled me. I guess this is when Karen must have realized that my stepdad wasn't alone. She asked him if I was in the room, and he said yes. Karen then started pleading that she had to talk to me. My stepdad looked at me curiously, and I took the phone from him. I started to ask her if she even knew what she was getting herself into. Karen smirked, hearing my voice, and told me that she knew exactly what she was getting into. She continued, saying how I shouldn't even be crying about Jerry since we were officially separated anyway, so he was free to marry her now. As if this wasn't enough, Karen then dropped another bombshell. Jerry, and she wanted me to attend their wedding so I could bless them in their new journey. I felt a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief hearing her words. They expected me to put on a facade of acceptance, to showcase unity and happiness, when in reality, I was grappling with the shattered remnants of my own heart. The whole situation felt like a twisted joke on me. She started talking about how it would mean so much to them if I could deliver a speech for their special day, which would indicate to everyone that I was okay with their wedding. Stunned, I found myself at a loss for words. Without hesitation, my mother swiftly took the phone from my hands and addressed Karen directly. She firmly expressed that Karen's actions were reprehensible and amounted to a new low. In response, Karen defiantly argued that she and Jerry were in love, insisting that only she could make him happy, and demanding that the family should accept their relationship. I left my parents to deal with Karen as I retreated to the guest bedroom, where I locked myself in and cried. I don't remember much of the night. The next morning, I woke up with a mixture of anger and determination. The audacity of Karen's actions fueled a fire within me. Instead of letting this revelation shatter me, I decided to turn the tables. I knew I had to face this head-on and come out stronger. I was not going to let them suck away my happiness and mental peace. I had a plan forming in my head and was determined to make Karen regret ever inviting me. I opened up my laptop and began scrolling through her social media profiles. I scanned each and every social media picture she had ever posted. As luck would have it, I finally found what I was looking for. I called a family meeting where I explained my plan. I would attend Karen and Jerry's engagement party. But not alone. I would be inviting a very special guest to be my plus one, unbeknownst to Jerry and Karen. My mom looked at me curiously as I explained that I would be going with none other than her ex-boyfriend from college, Ron. Ron was supposedly the great love of my stepsister's life, and she even had a tattoo of his name from their dating days. They had had a painful breakup, and I knew for a fact that she would almost die in shock to see me arm in arm with her ex. My mom's eyes widened in realization. I grinned at her mischievously. She gave me a subtle nod of approval to confirm that she understood my plan. My stepdad, on the other hand, thought this might take things too far and advised me not to ruin my stepsister's wedding. Update 1. It's been a few days since I posted any updates to my story. Thank you all for your comments. I am surprised that a lot of you understand and support my petty actions. I will admit that I did want to be the bigger person initially, but watching Karen update more and more of her engagement pictures with Jerry officially solidified my plan, and I set everything in motion. I sent a friend request to Ron on Facebook, and when he accepted, I sent him a message. To my surprise, he responded, and we started talking. I was upfront with him about my identity as Karen's stepsister and her soon-to-be husband's ex. I told him about my plan to invite him as my +1 to their wedding. He seemed intrigued and curious as to why I was reaching out to him, but I explained everything. I told him about how Karen had cheated on me with my own husband and was now marrying him. I told him that I wanted to take him with me so that I could make Karen feel the same way she made me feel. After hearing everything, Ron finally agreed to accompany me. I feel excited thinking of the look on Jerry and Karen's faces when they see me attend their wedding with Ron. My stepdad has no idea that I'll be taking Ron after our last conversation where he discouraged me from bringing him as my +1 to Karen's wedding. I'm choosing to keep this information to myself for now. I will update you next when the wedding takes place in a few days. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update. As much as I wanted to update you earlier, a lot has happened in my life, and I needed some time to settle down. As I had mentioned earlier, I did take Ron with me to the wedding. When the day of their marriage arrived, I put on a brave face, clad in an outfit that radiated confidence. I walked into their wedding in the arms of Ron. Jerry's eyes widened when he saw me walking in with my special guest. He must have immediately recognized Ron as Karen's ex. We ignored his expressions and pretended to find our designated seats. Jerry came up to me and angrily whispered, asking why I was there with Karen's ex, but I simply smiled. He could not make a scene in front of everyone and had to begrudgingly walk back up to the aisle, eyeing me angrily. When it was time for the bride to make her entrance, everyone stood up from their seats. Karen, adorned in her bridal glory, walked in with my stepdad. She spotted me among the guests and flashed a triumphant smile. I returned it with a smirk, refusing to let her see my vulnerability. Then she saw Ron standing next to me and froze in her tracks. The music continued, and my stepdad urged her to keep walking, but Karen refused to move. Her eyes darted between me and him, perhaps still confused. I held my head high, maintaining a composed demeanor. As my stepdad noticed Karen staring at me, he looked up at me and Ron and must have understood what was going on. The air in the room thickened with tension, and I could practically feel the collective curiosity of the guests intensifying. Karen stormed toward me and stopped in front of us, her face contorted with a volatile mix of anger and disbelief. "Congratulations, Karen," I said, my voice steady. "I'm genuinely happy for you both." "What the hell is this?" she spat out, her voice a venomous hiss. I met her gaze with an unflinching stare. "This, Karen, is my +1, I replied, a touch of satisfaction in my voice. "Meet Ron. You remember him, right? From your college days? Or should I mention the tattoo on your hand?" I added, relishing the disbelief on her face. Ron stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Hey Karen, it's good to see you after so many years. We thought we'd share in the joy of your special day," he explained calmly, not taking the bait for a confrontation. Karen's face flushed with rage. "Joy? You call this joy? You're ruining everything," she shouted, her voice cutting through the hum of the crowd. The room fell into a stunned silence. Guests stared at Karen, their faces mirroring the shock that permeated the air. Whispers and murmurs echoed through the room as people exchanged incredulous glances. Maintaining my composure, I responded to Karen, "Well, Karen, it was you who graciously invited me to your wedding with Jerry, so I thought I'd return the favor and bring along your ex, Ron." The room buzzed with murmurs and gasps as the guests processed the unfolding drama. Karen's eyes narrowed at me, and she seemed momentarily taken aback. It was clear she hadn't anticipated such a bold response. Ron, maintaining his calm demeanor, interjected, "Karen, we're here just to celebrate your happiness. No need to turn this into a scene." Karen scoffed, "Celebrate my happiness? How can you even be with someone like her? Are you dating her now?" I smiled at her disdain and, shrugging nonchalantly, replied, "Like I said, you invited me. I'm just here to honor that invitation and wish you and Jerry a lifetime of joy together. What happens between Ron and me should not be your concern, especially when you're about to get married." The tension in the room escalated as Karen seethed with anger. Jerry, who was standing up at the altar, came running down, trying to urge Karen not to make a scene so they could continue their celebration. Karen pushed him aside angrily. She then hurled her bouquet across the room, clearly upset. The bouquet soared through the air, leaving a trail of petals in its wake before crashing onto the floor. Ignoring the collective gasps, Karen stormed out of the venue, her gown trailing behind her in a swirl of white. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving a lingering sense of disbelief in her wake. The guests exchanged bewildered glances, unsure of how to react to the unexpected turn of events. Some attempted awkward smiles, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The atmosphere, once filled with celebration, now hung heavy with tension and confusion. Jerry looked at me angrily and opened his mouth to yell, but my mom firmly told him to keep his mouth shut after what he had the audacity to put me through. With a smirk, I whispered to Ron that we should leave, and he nodded in agreement. The room erupted into a whirlwind of reactions: shock, anger, and whispered conversations. I exited the venue with my head held high. The weight of betrayal had lifted. The world had seen my pain, my resilience, and my ability to rise above the wreckage of a broken marriage. I don't care if people think I went too far, because I never slept with someone behind their back or broke someone's marriage. All I did was give my stepsister a taste of her own medicine. Update 3. I am blown away by everyone's reaction in just a few days since my last update. I am glad to see that the majority of you understand why I did what I did, and I also understand some of your negative reactions. Honestly, I don't regret what I did at all. I've heard from my stepdad that Jerry and Karen have officially broken up. She refused to go through with the wedding, no matter how much Jerry pleaded with her. I guess this means she might have some lingering feelings for Ron, and seeing him that day would have reminded her of those feelings. I'm not one to revel in others' pain, but sometimes consequences are the only lessons people understand. Jerry has given me many angry missed calls and messages, but I've chosen to block him. My stepdad reprimanded me for what I did at my stepsister's wedding, and out of respect, I didn't argue back with him much. My mom has asked me to give him some time and space, and I've agreed. In the aftermath, I'm choosing to focus on rebuilding my life and finding happiness within myself. I will definitely be joining therapy, as everyone has recommended, as I navigate the uncertainties of life. For now, I want to concentrate on my personal growth, rediscovering my passions, and surrounding myself with positive influences only.